You know that moment when you finally decide you've had enough? When you stop saying yes to things that drain you, stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, and stop tolerating disrespect just to keep the peace. That moment is powerful. Because the truth is, being the nice girl isn't always about kindness, it's often about fear. Fear of conflict, fear of judgment, fear of being labeled as difficult. But here's the reality: the moment you stop living for other people's approval is the moment you start living for yourself. And that's when everything changes. Being the nice girl often comes with an invisible price tag. It's about more than just being kind or considerate. It's about constantly putting others' needs above your own, even when it hurts you. It's saying yes when you really mean no. It's keeping quiet to avoid confrontation. It's tolerating disrespect, brushing off mistreatment, and convincing yourself that keeping the peace is more important than standing up for yourself. But every time you do that, you lose a little piece of your confidence, your self-worth, and your sense of identity. The cost isn't just emotional, it's physical and mental too. Carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations while neglecting your own can lead to stress, exhaustion, and resentment. Over time, you may start to feel invisible, unheard, or even taken for granted. People begin to expect your silence, your compliance, and your endless patience. And the more you give, the less you seem to receive in return. But the most dangerous part, you begin to believe that this is just the way life is. That being nice means accepting less, settling for unfair treatment, and always putting yourself last. That's the real cost: forgetting your worth and losing sight of who you are beneath the people-pleasing habits. And unless you decide to change, that cost only gets heavier. People-pleasing behavior often starts from a place of good intentions. You want to be liked, to avoid conflict, and to make others feel comfortable. It feels natural to say yes, to agree, and to go along with what others want. But when people-pleasing becomes a pattern, it turns into something much deeper and more damaging. It becomes a way of seeking validation, avoiding rejection, and controlling how others perceive you. It's less about genuine kindness and more about fear of disappointing others, fear of being judged, and fear of being seen as selfish or difficult. This behavior can be rooted in upbringing, culture, or past experiences. Maybe you were taught that being nice and agreeable was the right way to behave. Maybe you learned that avoiding conflict kept you safe, or that love and acceptance were conditional. Over time, this programming shapes how you interact with the world. You start believing that your value is tied to how much you can give, how accommodating you can be, and how easy you are to get along with. The problem is, people-pleasing creates a cycle where you ignore your own needs to keep others happy. You say yes even when it drains you, avoid hard conversations to keep the peace, and downplay your feelings to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. But each time you do that, you reinforce the belief that your needs don't matter, and people will treat you the way you teach them to treat you. If you constantly put others first and never express your boundaries, they'll assume you're okay with it. The truth is, people-pleasing isn't about being a good person, it's about avoiding discomfort. It feels easier to sacrifice your own needs than risk rejection or confrontation. But in the long run, it erodes your confidence and leaves you feeling unseen and unfulfilled. Breaking this habit starts with recognizing that your needs are just as valid as anyone else's, and that true connection comes from honesty, not from constantly saying yes. The fear behind saying no is one of the deepest reasons why people stay trapped in the cycle of people-pleasing. Saying no can feel uncomfortable, risky, and even dangerous depending on your experiences. For many, it's not just about declining a request, it feels like rejecting a person, risking their disappointment, or opening the door to conflict. There's an internal voice that whispers, if you say no, they'll think you're selfish. They'll be angry. They'll walk away. They'll stop liking you. And that fear can be powerful enough to silence you. This fear is often rooted in childhood or past experiences. Maybe you were taught that obedience was love, or that being agreeable was the best way to stay safe or accepted. Maybe you learned that conflict led to rejection or punishment, so you trained yourself to avoid it at any cost. Over time, this fear becomes automatic. Saying yes feels safer even when it costs you your time, energy, and well-being. There's also the fear of judgment. What if people think you're rude or cold? What if they label you as selfish or unkind? Many people, especially those who identify with being the nice girl, carry a deep desire to be liked and accepted. The idea of letting someone down feels unbearable. But here's the hard truth: constantly saying yes doesn't guarantee love or respect. In fact, it often leads to being taken for granted. People begin to expect your compliance, and your boundaries slowly disappear. There's also the fear of losing opportunities. You might think, if I say no to this project, I'll miss out. If I say no to this favor, I'll seem unhelpful. If I say no to this invitation, I'll be left out next time. But saying yes for the wrong reasons doesn't open doors, it builds resentment. You find yourself overcommitted, exhausted, and frustrated, wondering why no one seems to respect your time. But here's the reality. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you're saying no to yourself. You're saying no to your needs, your priorities, and your peace of mind. The fear behind saying no is valid. It's uncomfortable to disappoint people. But it's even more painful to disappoint yourself over and over again. Learning to say no isn't about being rude or selfish. It's about honoring your time, energy, and values. And the people who truly respect you will understand that. The ones who don't, they're the ones benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Boundaries are not walls that keep people out. They are the lines that define where you end and where someone else begins. They are the standards you set to protect your energy, your emotional well-being, and your values. Without boundaries, it's easy to lose yourself in other people's expectations, constantly giving more than you have and feeling drained, resentful, or overwhelmed. Setting boundaries is not about being harsh or distant. It's about being clear and honest about what you need to feel safe, respected, and valued. When you lack boundaries, you become vulnerable to being taken advantage of. You say yes when you want to say no. You tolerate disrespect because you don't want to rock the boat. You stay silent when you should speak up. Over time, this erodes your sense of self. You start to feel invisible, like your feelings and needs don't matter. And the worst part, people will treat you according to the standards you set. If you show them that it's okay to ignore your needs, they will. Not because they're malicious, but because you've allowed it. Boundaries are essential because they communicate what is acceptable and what isn't. They let people know how you expect to be treated. They help you protect your energy, avoid burnout, and stay true to your values. For example, a boundary might be deciding that you won't answer work emails after a certain time. It could be refusing to tolerate disrespectful language or choosing not to engage in conversations that drain you emotionally. Boundaries can be about your time, your emotions, your relationships, and even your physical space. But setting boundaries isn't always easy, especially if you're used to being the nice girl who avoids conflict at all costs. You might worry that people will get upset, that they'll see you as cold or selfish. And yes, some people might react negatively, especially if they're used to benefiting from your lack of boundaries. But that discomfort is temporary and it's necessary. Because every time you set a boundary, you teach people how to treat you. You teach them that your time is valuable, that your emotions matter, and that you won't sacrifice your well-being for their convenience. The reality is, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect. If someone respects you, they will respect your boundaries. And if they don't, that's information about the relationship itself. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They are an act of courage. They are how you protect your peace and ensure that you are living in alignment with your true self. Without them, you are constantly at the mercy of other people's demands and expectations. But with them, you reclaim control over your life. Discomfort is often seen as something to avoid, a feeling that signals danger, rejection, or failure. But in reality, discomfort is a sign of growth. It's the space where change happens, where you stretch beyond your comfort zone and start becoming the person you're meant to be. When you embrace discomfort, you give yourself permission to step into your power, even when it feels scary or uncertain. And if you're someone who's spent a lifetime being the nice girl, avoiding discomfort probably feels like second nature. Think about it. Saying no feels uncomfortable, so you say yes to avoid guilt. Speaking up when you feel disrespected feels uncomfortable, so you stay silent to keep the peace. Setting boundaries feels uncomfortable, so you let people overstep them. Every time you avoid discomfort, it feels like relief in the moment, but long-term it costs you your self-respect, your energy, and your freedom. Discomfort is the price of growth, but avoidance is the cost of staying stuck. The truth is, any meaningful change in life comes with discomfort. Whether it's ending a toxic relationship, confronting a disrespectful friend, or standing up for your needs, it's going to feel awkward, tense, or even painful at first. You might worry about how people will react, whether they'll be angry, or whether you'll be seen as selfish. But that temporary discomfort is necessary if you want to break free from patterns that no longer serve you. Discomfort also teaches resilience. The more you practice facing uncomfortable situations like saying no or expressing your needs, the easier it becomes. You start realizing that discomfort doesn't last forever. The fear of it is often worse than the reality. And every time you choose courage over comfort, you strengthen your confidence. You begin to trust that you can handle difficult conversations, that you can survive rejection, and that your self-worth isn't tied to someone else's approval. But embracing discomfort isn't just about confrontation, it's about honesty. It's about being real with yourself and others, even when it's hard. It's about admitting when you're overwhelmed, when you need help, or when something isn't working for you. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But it's also liberating, because when you stop running from discomfort, you start living with integrity. You stop betraying yourself just to avoid upsetting others. You stop watering yourself down to fit into spaces that don't value you. Growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. It happens in moments of vulnerability, courage, and hard choices. It happens when you feel the fear, the tension, the awkwardness, and you move forward anyway. And once you start embracing discomfort, you realize it's not your enemy. It's a signpost that you're on the right path, stepping into the person you were always meant to be. Kindness and strength are often seen as opposites, but they're actually two sides of the same coin. Real kindness isn't about being passive, agreeable, or letting people walk all over you. And real strength isn't about being cold, aggressive, or shutting others out. True kindness comes from strength, the strength to be honest, to set boundaries, and to show up as your authentic self, even when it's uncomfortable. Redefining kindness and strength means letting go of the outdated belief that being nice means being a doormat. Many people, especially those labeled as nice girls, grow up believing that kindness means saying yes to everything, avoiding conflict, and keeping other people happy no matter the cost. It's about being agreeable, accommodating, and making sure everyone else is comfortable, even if you're uncomfortable. But that version of kindness isn't genuine, it's fear-based. It's about maintaining approval and avoiding rejection, not about genuine compassion or connection. And over time, it can lead to burnout, resentment, and losing touch with who you really are. Real kindness starts with being kind to yourself. It means respecting your own needs, setting healthy boundaries, and protecting your emotional well-being. It's recognizing that your energy is valuable and that you don't owe anyone your time, your presence, or your agreement just to make them feel good. It's understanding that saying no can be an act of kindness when it's honest and necessary. Because the truth is, when you constantly say yes out of guilt, you're not really being kind, you're being compliant. And there's a difference. Strength is the backbone of real kindness. It takes strength to speak your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. It takes strength to say no, to disappoint someone, and to risk disapproval. It takes strength to set boundaries and stand by them, even when people push back. And it takes strength to walk away from situations that drain you, even if it means upsetting others. That's not being rude or harsh, that's being honest, and honesty is one of the kindest things you can offer in any relationship. Kindness without strength is just people-pleasing. It's sacrificing your own needs to avoid upsetting others. It's saying yes when you mean no, and smiling when you feel hurt, just to keep things easy. But strength without kindness is cold and disconnected. It's about control, not connection. The balance of the two is where true empowerment lies. It's about being soft, but with boundaries, compassionate, but with clarity, open-hearted, but with self-respect. When you redefine kindness and strength, you give yourself permission to be real. You stop seeing boundaries as selfish and start seeing them as necessary. You stop believing that avoiding conflict is noble and start realizing that honest conversations are the foundation of healthy relationships. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start standing tall in your truth. Because the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is to be real, to be strong, and to love yourself enough to protect your peace. Self-respect is the foundation of a strong, fulfilling life. It's about valuing yourself enough to know what you deserve and refusing to settle for less. It's about recognizing your worth, honoring your boundaries, and making choices that align with your values, even when it's difficult. Without self-respect, it's easy to fall into patterns of people-pleasing, overgiving, and tolerating mistreatment, all in the hope of gaining approval or avoiding rejection. But every time you compromise your self-respect, you chip away at your confidence and sense of identity. When you respect yourself, you send a powerful message to the world about how you expect to be treated. You communicate that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable. You show that you won't tolerate disrespect, manipulation, or being taken for granted. And the people in your life will take their cues from you. If you constantly bend your boundaries to keep others happy, they'll assume it's okay to push those limits. If you stay silent when you're hurt, they'll assume you're fine. But when you stand firm in your boundaries, when you speak up for yourself, and when you say no with confidence, you teach people to treat you with the same level of respect you show yourself. Self-respect also means holding yourself accountable. It's about making choices that align with your goals, values, and vision for your life. It's about being honest with yourself about what you need and what you deserve, even if it means walking away from situations that are comfortable but harmful. This might mean ending relationships that no longer serve you, setting firm boundaries at work, or distancing yourself from people who drain your energy. These choices are never easy, but they are necessary if you want to build a life rooted in integrity and self-worth. But self-respect isn't just about how you allow others to treat you, it's also about how you treat yourself. It's about the way you talk to yourself, the choices you make, and the standards you set. Are you speaking to yourself with kindness and compassion, or are you constantly criticizing and tearing yourself down? Are you honoring your needs and dreams, or are you putting them on the back burner to prioritize others? Every small choice either reinforces or undermines your self-respect. And yes, standing in your self-respect can feel uncomfortable. It can mean saying no and risking someone's disappointment. It can mean having tough conversations or setting boundaries that others don't like. But the temporary discomfort of honoring yourself is far less painful than the long-term damage of self-betrayal. Because when you betray yourself to make others happy, you end up losing both. You lose your peace, and you often still end up facing rejection or resentment. The truth is, self-respect is one of the deepest forms of self-love. It's about believing that you are worthy of love, respect, and kindness, not because of what you do for others, but simply because of who you are. And when you lead with self-respect, everything in your life begins to shift. You attract healthier relationships, stronger opportunities, and greater peace. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, knowing that you'll always have your own back. And you stop settling for less than you deserve because you know your worth and you refuse to compromise it. Owning your voice and choices is one of the most powerful steps toward living a life of authenticity and self-respect. It's about standing confidently in who you are, what you believe, and the decisions you make without constantly seeking permission or approval from others. For too long, many people, especially those conditioned to be the nice girl, have been taught to silence their voices, soften their opinions, and second-guess their choices just to keep the peace or avoid conflict. But the truth is, every time you silence yourself, you give away a piece of your power. Your voice is your power. It's how you express your needs, share your ideas, set boundaries, and stand up for what matters to you. When you stay quiet out of fear of judgment, rejection, or discomfort, you end up shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for your full potential. And over time, that silence can feel suffocating. You begin to question your worth, doubt your instincts, and lose trust in your ability to make decisions. But owning your voice means refusing to stay silent, even when it's uncomfortable. It means speaking up for what you need, expressing your feelings honestly, and letting the world know who you are and what you stand for. The same goes for your choices. Every decision you make is a reflection of your values, your desires, and the life you're building. But when you constantly second-guess yourself or make choices based on what others expect, you end up living someone else's version of your life. You might choose a career, a relationship, or a lifestyle just to keep others happy, while silently feeling unfulfilled. Owning your choices means taking responsibility for your life and refusing to let fear or guilt dictate your path. It's about making decisions that align with your truth, even if they're unpopular or misunderstood. But here's the reality: owning your voice and choices won't always be easy. There will be moments of doubt. Times when people push back, criticize, or try to convince you to stay small. It can feel safer to blend in, to agree, to avoid making waves. But safe doesn't lead to fulfillment. Safe keeps you stuck. The people who matter, the ones who truly respect and care for you, will honor your voice, even if they don't always agree with it. And those who don't, they're often the ones benefiting from your silence. Owning your voice also means embracing imperfection. You won't always get it right. You'll make mistakes. You'll change your mind, but that's part of growth. The goal isn't to be perfect, it's to be real, to be honest, to be courageous enough to stand by your choices, learn from them, and keep moving forward. Because every time you own your voice, you strengthen it. Every time you stand by a decision, you build trust in yourself. And the more you do it, the more empowered you become. You stop asking, is it okay if I? And start declaring, this is what I've chosen. You stop waiting for approval and start giving yourself permission. You stop apologizing for who you are and start embracing it. And in that space, you find freedom. Freedom to live on your terms. Freedom to be unapologetically yourself. And freedom to create a life that feels true, fulfilling, and deeply aligned with who you are. Stepping into your power isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you've silenced for too long. It's about understanding that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat, that saying no is not an act of cruelty, but one of self-respect, and that setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish, it makes you strong. It's about embracing discomfort, standing by your choices, and speaking with a voice that is firm, clear, and unapologetically yours. Because the truth is, the moment you stop living to please others is the moment you start living for yourself. The moment you stop chasing approval is the moment you find freedom. And the moment you own your voice and your choices is the moment you begin creating a life that is true, authentic, and fulfilling. So let this be the day you decide that your time, your energy, and your dreams are worth protecting. Let this be the moment you choose to be kind, but never at the cost of your strength. To be compassionate, but never at the cost of your truth. To be open, but never at the cost of your boundaries. You don't need permission to stand tall in your power. You just need the courage to start.